I want to bring the Architecture Review Committee's meeting to order. It is, for the record, 7:02. Our first order of business today. Yes, I'm sorry. I did want to make a record of the fact that we do have a quorum present. 4 of the 5 committee members are here present. Now, I want to go right into the citizens to be heard, but first, I'd like to give the applicant the opportunity to make his presentation in order to help us inform us and the public of the matter at hand. And is Mr. Castro here?
Chairman,
Yes.
If I may suggest that ask them if they'd like to speak here or
Okay.
under 5.1 for the public hearing.
Right.
Because Mr. Castro can do his presentation once you open the public hearing.
Okay. Now, would you like to speak now, or would you like to wait until the later order of business?
I can speak now, it's fine.
Okay, that would be fine.
During citizens to be heard, it's 3 minutes.
Okay.
So if it's longer than.
Well, that doesn't include the applicant. That doesn't that just refer to the people to be heard?
That want to speak on non-agenda items. So if they want to address that specific item, it's best to do it under the public hearing.
I didn't get that.
If they're wanting to address the specific agenda item on 5.1 for the public hearing on 311 Foxhall, I would suggest they do it during the public hearing, because then they're not limited to 3 minutes.
Okay. Mr. Castro, would you like to step forward with your presentation?
So actually, Chairman, is if there's no one, if no one's here to speak and citizens.
There are people, there is one other citizen to speak.
If it's outside the actual agenda item, then they can speak now. But if it's on the agenda item, you do it under 5.1 when you open the public hearing.
Okay. Now, is there anyone that does wish to speak? I have here a Kevin, can't pronounce the last name. Okay.
How much time do I get during the public talk about his application?
I believe that you give 3 minutes.
But that's during the citizens to be heard. During the public hearing, you can give him at your discretion more time.
Okay.
I like to speak afterwards. I want to hear what you have to say. Maybe I'm like, I need to listen to
So I think you need to move, Chairman, to 5.1 and open the public hearing. And
Okay.
then the applicant can speak and then they can hear.
Consent agenda, please.
Yeah,
Actually, it's under 5 is the regular agenda item.
but you have 4.1 as the minutes.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Under the consent agenda, I'd like to hear a motion under 4.1 for the approval of our January 5th Architecture Review Committee meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Maretta Scott, I'll make a motion to approve the Architectural Review Committee meeting minutes for January 5th of 2022.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second, George Booth seconds. Maretta Scott made the motion. Is there any discussion
No, not on this.
on the
Call for
minutes?
vote.
No discussion? Then can I hear a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, I already have a motion to approve the minutes. May I have a vote on to approval of the minutes? Unanimous. Now, have we made a record of who is in attendance on our committee tonight?
Sure, but if you'd like, I can take a record call, make a roll call.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to be sure it's on the record. Okay, thank you. Okay.
So if you could, Chairman, go to 5.1 and read the agenda item and then open the public hearing at the time.
I'm going to open this up and read the item considered under regular agenda items. 5.1, public hearing on an application submitted by Ryan Castro, 311 Foxhall Lane, CB 5778, Lot 9, Block 4, for the proposed removal of 8 oak trees and several other species of trees, all at least 6-inch in diameter, for the construction of a new residential structure. Yes, the time for this regular agenda discussion is 7:08 p.m. Now, Mr. Castro, would you like to go ahead and make your presentation?
Sure.
Do you have a PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm here just to formally request removing some trees for the build of my personal residence at 311 Foxhall Lane. There we go. All right, thank you. So before we get started, I just wanted to start out with the design parameters that I had in front of me. So we took the existing build pad. There was a house there prior to me buying the lot that was demolished, and I never saw the structure up, but on Google Earth, you could see the existing structure. So we took the build pad of the original structure and utilized the existing clearing that is kind of right inside of here where it says lot 9, and right there. And we designed around it. Now there's a large section of oak trees just in front of where it says lot 9, probably the largest oak trees on the lot that we were trying to save. And unfortunately, that forced me into doing a 2-story house, which wasn't ideal, but I think given the parameters, it was the best design that we could come up with all of my family's
Can you
needs.
speak a little closer to the microphone, please?
Yes, sir. Is that any better? All right, so moving on to the slide 2. So this is the tree survey that I had done, illustrating all of the trees on the property. Everything labeled in blue are oak trees. Red is the hack trees. Yellow is a Chinese privet, which is really a shrub. Green is elm. Purple is mountain laurel, and orange is a persimmon. So the bulk majority of the trees on this are oak trees and elms. There are the few hacks, and there are a ton of Chinese privet. Again, that's considered a shrub, not a tree, but I had my tree surveyor go ahead and survey those out while he was there, just in case I needed those. The Chinese privet, this goes into kind of what it is. It's an invasive shrub that that I'm sure everybody has come in encounter with, given how many of those are on my lot. I would assume everybody has had to deal with these, but they are very, very fast growing and very invasive. Everybody knows what oak tree is. That's what we're trying to save. Trying to save all the oak trees that we can. Elm trees, again, those are really pretty as well. Trying to save as many of those as we could. We designed around these as best we could. The persimmon, very small persimmon on the property that is inside of the build pad. And then the mountain laurel, there's 3 very small mountain laurels that have to come out. Again, very, very minor. And then the hackberry tree, yeah, I don't know how y'all feel about hackberry trees, but they are, they don't look very good. I'm taking them out more for landscaping. I don't think any of them are on the build pad. But moving on. So this is the actual structure of the home, the footprint on the superimposed onto the tree survey. You can see I'm as far back as I could push the house. We have a 10-foot side setback right here. I'm basically touching it. I've got a 10-foot side setback here. I'm basically touching it. We're trying our best to not do a forward-facing garage. I don't think a build of this caliber, a forward-facing garage would do any justice to it. So we actually have the driveway snaking in through here. We're going to be removing an oak tree right about there. But the driveway is going to come in, the garage is here, and there's a side entry garage here. So again, these are the big live oaks that we were trying to save and build around. My only other option was to push the house in front of this, which you could see would push it right onto the road. And I'd probably still have to lose some of these in landscaping. So the existing structure, or I'm sorry, the structure that was there prior to me buying the lot was right inside of this area. And so we did our best to utilize that existing build pad. Inside of here, these are all of the trees that have to come out that are inside of the build pad. I can't read that very well, but overall, the entire scope of the project between the house, the driveway, and the landscaping, we have to lose 8 oak trees and 7 elm trees. Again, you can see most of the oak trees that we have to lose are inside of this garage. And there's a few of them that are going to be where the driveway snakes through. We've got obviously one right inside of the house, several of them inside of the perimeter of the house. That's not a good clip. Here's the driveway. Again, I try to utilize the existing driveway. And we did a pretty good job of it all the way until we got to about this point where I'm taking out this one oak tree that's in my way. And obviously these trees that are where the concrete wants to go. Here's the landscape plan. So we have basically removing all the trees in the backyard and replacing, let's see, there's a total of 5 25-gallon trees that I am proposing on replanting, 3 25-gallon trees here that I'm planning on replanting. This number is probably going to grow. I'm probably going to do 7 or 8 of them along this fence line. And then this is proposed pool, proposed gazebo, backyard, flat work, and a couple of retaining walls here because we do have some elevation on the property. And that is a list of all of the trees that have to come out. Again, the majority of them are Chinese privets, which I don't consider a tree. This is an illustration of all the trees that I am proposing taking out. You see the yellow is most of them. That's the Chinese privet. I think there's 50 of them littered throughout the whole property. I'm just basically taking all of them out. I'm leaving some on this. I'm proposing to leave some on this fence line or this property line just as a buffer between the neighbor and I. And then I'm not really interested in doing too much back here, just again, to try and leave a buffer for the rear neighbor. That's a illustration of the home to be built. And these are all the photos of the trees that I'm proposing taking out. There are several slides here, so I'll just kind of scroll through them so we can kind of see the scope of it. These are the persimmons. A couple of the elm trees that have to come out. And that's the extent of my presentation.
Can you leave that slide up that's shows the house and the trees on the site plan? Thank you. I'd like to now open this up for the public citizens to be heard. I have a Kevin at 210 Hibiscus. Would you like to speak, sir?
It's okay. First of all, thank you for letting me speak. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I have nothing against the new homeowner and what he wants to do or anything. So my thoughts are my thoughts. I've lived here for over, well, a long time, over 60 years. I know a lot about this area. First of all, we call a lot of those Chinese privets China berries, and they're not native. But hackberries are very important too. Once they get, if they're taken care of, they don't live forever, but they really are trying to save the oak trees. So what I was concerned about is that it says a lot of people were not given notice. I know it says 200 feet, but I was not given notice until I went by and looked at it. The main problem I have with this is when you walk over the lot and look at the trees, nothing is labeled with any of those silver tags. The public has no way to know ahead of time what trees are going to be removed. I walked over and I saw red labels, yellow labels, green labels, and blue labels. And so I had no idea what really is going to be removed. This paperwork right here is very hard to understand. I think that in the future, and I think homeowners ought to do it, and people with build, they ought to go ahead and label the trees a lot better with some kind of special tag. And I know this is a little off topic, but I think the city of Castle Hills ought to put together a ribbon that they buy that's printed, trees to be cut. And when a person wants to cut trees around here, they go buy that from the city of Castle Hills, and then they put it around the tree so the public can walk right in there immediately and go, this tree goes, this tree stays. And I am not for clear cutting. I talked to someone at City Hall about this, and they said that how long as there was a residence there, a person could just clear cut. So that's a future ideal too. I also want to know what the homeowner is going to do about the drainage that goes through there. There's a drainage that comes all the way from over there where the First Baptist Church in Castle Hills used to be, and it goes through his lot, and it's all filled in with dirt. And when he builds the house there, I hope he'll be able to mediate the drainage, because that drainage goes straight across Foxhall, goes down in front of houses on Foxhall, and comes right down into my driveway and erodes the land. Now, I'm not against him building a house. I'm just saying this all needs to be considered. Now, again, my biggest problem with this whole thing, and again, the gentleman's right here, and he's really nice, and I know he wants to build a beautiful house to live here in Castle Hills, but the trees are not labeled right. And no one had, I went over and looked at it yesterday, the day before. I have no idea what was supposed to be cut. And I know he said he's moved around and wants to make sure he doesn't get rid of any extra oak trees. Well, it's not just oak trees too, it's also a lot of native trees. We don't need to be clear cutting everything out of here. So I'm hoping that y'all ask hard questions, and if you can't do anything about it this time, in the future, y'all will make sure the public is notified better, much better. I think the idea of labeling trees with a certain color or a tag that says to be cut would be very useful, because then you can walk straight in there and go, these are to be cut, these to be saved. And I think also we ought to I'm close. I don't know if I'm 200 feet from the gentleman, but it affects me. The drainage affects me when you build over there. And again, I'm not against him building his dream house at all, but the drainage has to be thought of too. Plus, I didn't know, if I wouldn't have known about what was going to happen with his property, if I didn't walk the area and look at it all the time, because I wasn't notified by the mail. And I think since I'm a citizen here and we all pay taxes and we all want to make sure the neighborhood looks good, we all need to be notified much better in the future about this. And I'm not again, he's did his best, but in the future, trees need to be labeled a lot better so the public knows what's going to be removed. And have any of y'all committee members, I know you're not going to answer me, but I hope some of y'all committee members have gone out there and looked at the property. That's what I keep stressing all the time. Don't drive by it, get out of your car, walk the property, because then you'll understand where I'm coming from. You'll see the size of the trees to be cut. You see the drainage issues. You'll see the native trees. You'll see what's going on. Because without the knowledge of being there, y'all are lost. You're just looking at a piece of paper that has a bunch of data on it and doesn't really explain anything. And just because a arborist says trees are not healthy, oaks need to be removed, don't just believe everything they say. I grew up around all this. I've been in a ranching family my whole life, and I know what oak trees do. Oak trees can look very gnarly, very rotten, but they're good, viable trees. And again, I don't want to squish his dreams, but we just can't keep clear cutting trees with no discretion, because eventually we're going to have an area that's a desert. So thank you very much for your time.
Would you like to speak, Miss, and please announce your name and address?
Okay, I'm Susie Moody and I live at 303 and at 307 Foxhall. I'll be your new neighbor. I'm excited someone's going to do something. My concern is a little bit like Kevin's of this, I call it the slough, but the water, because when it rains, it really, gets up high, that along that, I just have to call it a slough, along that slough on his side and my side, we need to leave those trees as much as we can. If not, it's just going to keep eroding. And I know that Jana in front had to rebuild a whole, I mean, the dirt just goes smack into the street and then it goes down to his house. And I think if we keep those trees, and they're crummy trees, but they help stop that water from, and that slough thing just getting wider and wider. So that is my only concern, is some of those trees. And I heard they were tagged for what kind they were, but I don't know if they're tagged still because that's what needs to go away. I don't know enough about all this if those are trees he wants to take down. So my concern is in between his property and mine to keep as many trees along the water slough so that it doesn't just keep getting worse and worse. And I guess that's all. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that had wished to speak tonight? If not, at 7:24, we will close the public hearing, and I'm going to go to our consent agenda, in which I would bring it before our Architecture Review Committee and see if anyone would like to make a motion.
Moretta Scott, I would like to make a motion to move 5.2 discussion and possible action on the application. I would like to move to open it for discussion.
Do I hear a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. I'll call on you. Ms. Scott, would you like to do you have some comments to make?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Middleman. I would love to make some comments. First of all, my first comment is I've never received a presentation that was quite so difficult to read. As an ARC, a member, I've served as an alternate and a member on this committee. This is one of the most confusing set of documents I have received from a homeowner. Looking at trees, there are so many pages and there is not a single page where all the information is in the same place. It is very muddled. It's very unclear. It was very difficult to read because when we received it, even in a larger scale, trying to locate the 8 oak trees, I can still only find 7. And I have hunted on this list. I've hunted on the keys. I've hunted on the pages where it's numbered. I've looked everywhere. So I'd have to say I'm disappointed in the presentation that was given to us concerning these trees. If I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's 73 trees that are being removed.
No, man, well, that's if you consider a Chinese privet a tree.
Yes, all of the trees on there that are listed as trees on our legend here. And if you list the Chinese privet as a tree, and it looks like a tree, I'm not sure if it's technically tree or shrub, but there's 73 plant items, trees, and Chinese privets that you're going to be removed, which from my calculations is 29.91% of all the trees. So almost 30% of the trees on the property will be removed. Okay. So all I would ask is there an arborist report available? Did you have one done?
I do not have an arbor report.
Okay. I know a lot of times in making decisions for myself, an arborist report is very helpful to know about the health of the trees that you're asking to remove. A lot of times it's easier for us to say yes or no if the arborist's report indicates one way or another. That's all I have to say right now. I'd like to hear what some of my other committee members are thinking.
Either of y'all have any comment?
I do, George Booth. I went out to the property. Actually, I've been out there several times since I've seen the sign go up that the property was available. And I agree with Retta. Looking at these plans, there wasn't a composite showing the tree in relationship to the house of what was being cut down. I had to keep going back from page to page to try to make little notes and mark, 173 was being cut and it was an oak tree. And those are the ones that I'm most concerned about because seem to be cutting way too many oak trees. And it was just really hard to examine. And I can understand what Mr. Knippa said, that, if you went out there, you would have an idea by the color codes of markers on there, what it meant, because unfortunately, the map that you sent me, Mr. Middleman, wasn't online. They had some difficulties getting that posted. But even if you did have that, it's still really difficult to understand what was being cut down and the relationship to the property. And so I think, if that's something we can clarify in the future, it would help the committee members as well as the public make a better understanding of what's happening in their neighborhood.
To that note, I think we had decided, Mr. City Manager, that we were going to put in the application that the same numbering of the tree log that was being presented on paper would be marked on each tree on the site. In other words, that way it would correspond where people could look at the log of trees by number and see where that numbered tree sits on the lot. So when they tag the trees, they need to have not only a color code for the size or what the tree is, but for for identity to be able to locate
I think you're referring to what was done by council recently and approved by ordinance. So I think Mr. Castro submitted the application after the fact. I know Mr. Zamarone contacted him and asked him for that information, but when he submitted the application, council had not changed the ordinance relayed to that.
Are you saying that
That was done in the January meeting.
and his application was prior to that?
His application was prior to that, I believe, the first week of January. Prior to that, actually, he submitted his application in December, asked for a continuance, and council changed the ordinance at the January, I think, 11th meeting.
Okay.
So as a result of that, Mr. Zamarone had contacted Mr. Castro and asked for that information. Thus, that's what was sent out outside of the packet itself.
So this is
go ahead.
grandfathered then? The application is grandfathered since it was submitted before council changed the ordinance? Okay.
Essentially, yes. I mean, the ordinance hadn't been changed by council till that meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rapley.
Any other comments? I have a few things to say. first of all, could you step up to the podium again? And as hard as it was for me to read the print on this, it was really, really difficult. I have to agree with Ms. Scott that there should have been a much easier way and a much larger graphic representation, especially regarding the trees that you were removing. If I counted right, I thought I counted three heritage oak trees over 24-inch on your tree log.
No, those are, that's the drip line that you're looking at. That's 24 feet.
Mm.
There's no heritage oaks on my
Just a
property.
second, I highlighted them. It says 28-inch oak and 24-inch oak, number 7 and number 8 on the tree log.
I don't have that in front of me, but if we could flip over to the slide where the
Mr. Middleman, I think number 7 and number 8 are not listed as trees being removed.
I still would like to know where they are.
where
In
the
the condition they're in.
if I could get to that PowerPoint presentation. I
Pardon?
believe they're in the front. Yes. Oh. Yes, this is perfect. Yeah, so number 7 and number 8, that's actually one tree. It's the same root ball, but it's the largest tree on the property, and it is located right here. The double tree right there. Oh, can you go back to the last slide, please? No, sir, just the trees. That one's fine right there. So this is 7 and 8 right here. These are the ones in question.
How about, I see here tree number 224 is a 25-inch oak. Is that being salvaged?
220,
See-
224 is being saved, yes.
Okay, it would be helpful if you would bring the one up that has the trees overlaid over the floor plan of the house and point to us the trees that are the oak trees and their size of what it is you're removing.
Okay. Okay. So now the question is, which out of, on that last slide, it would be. So if we could go to the slide that had the house overlaid with the driveway. Up, I'm sorry. That one. Down. One down. Yeah. Okay, so this one, is there any way to enlarge that? Maybe go to slide.
That's the $60,000 question.
And my apologies, I should have printed off a 24 by 36. I'm unfamiliar with. Yes, perfect. Actually, it's got it's 2 down. If you can go 2 down, that would illustrate the driveway. Slide 12.
Good. Just have the driveway in there if you can.
Yes, sir. Okay, so this is probably the best way to see what's going on here. And I totally understand what you're saying of, it would have been nice if this would have been labeled with all of the numbers. So you wouldn't have to flip back and forth. I didn't have the data. I had two different people working on this. I had the surveyor, the tree surveyor, and then I have the architect overlaying it. The tree surveyor didn't provide us with, they provided us with the tree locations, but not the numbering. So my apologies for that. But the oak trees that are coming out is
You'd have to bring the slide down a little if you're possible.
176. This is an oak tree.
Okay,
All right, now that's a 6-inch oak tree. Okay, again, that's this one here. Inside of the house, there are this cluster here of that. And I'm sorry, are we just asking about the oak trees or overall?
well, specifically the oak trees, but
Okay.
I wouldn't mind knowing if there's any elms in there or,
There is an elm tree. This is an elm tree right here.
what size are those?
That is a 14-inch elm tree.
Mhm.
These two are oak trees. I'm sorry, one of them is a Chinese privet and this one is an oak tree.
What size?
That is 163. That's a 13-inch oak tree.
Okay,
These two are hackberries. These two here. These two, one of them is a Chinese privet, the other is an oak tree. That's an 8-inch oak tree. This is an oak tree. 42. That's a 10-inch oak tree.
which one? I don't see that.
That's this one right here.
Okay,
This is a hack tree.
mm-hmm.
This is an elm tree.
What size?
That's a 10-inch elm tree.
Okay,
This is a hack tree. These are Chinese privets. 2 out of this cluster are oak trees and 2 of them are Chinese privets. The 2 oak trees. An 11-inch oak tree and a 14-inch oak tree. So that should take care of everything on this side of the home. This tree has to come down. This is an elm. That's a 19-inch elm. This one here, it's growing inward into the home. This tree here is also an elm. And that's a 16-inch elm. And this tree back here, which is on the back perimeter, is a Chinese privet. And that is all the trees inside of that slide.
what about the area where your plan shows a swimming pool?
Yes, so if we can kind of scroll over to the right of this slide.
What's
Okay,
being
there's
removed
one
back
elm
there?
tree and there's one oak tree out of this cluster that's coming out.
Where are those
So-
located?
All of these I'm proposing on removing and replanting. There's 3 persimmons, I'm sorry, one persimmon, three persimmons, one mountain laurel. Most of them are Chinese privets, and there's one oak tree and two elms. The oak tree is here next to that pond. That is a mosquito trap now. And that is a 16-inch oak.
And you're removing that?
That is to be removed.
And can you
And
show us the plan with your backyard and your pool? Will that tree be shown on that?
it would not be
illustration?
shown on it, but you can see from the distance from the patio to the tree is maybe 20 feet. And so the pool is actually going to come clear out to here.
Okay,
And the other tree in question was the elm tree, which is a 9-inch elm. And that is inside of this cluster right here. There's one elm tree and 5 Chinese privets.
well, I would agree that the Chinese privets should be on a dangerous list, as well as hackberry from a technical standpoint, but at the current time, those are protected trees. So Ms. Scott tagged the percentage that you're removing based on today's ordinance. The other thing that I caught note of was a flooding issue, a drainage issue across your lot. I didn't see anything in your application that addressed that. Can you describe for us how you're handling the floodplain or drainage across your site?
So currently the site is not in any floodplain. It does have drainage. I don't believe there is even an established drainage easement. However, there's a 10-foot building setback. So the drainage is along this property, and it is, I've never seen it in a rain event, but I can imagine that it swells up pretty big. So my objective would be to, like Ms. Susan had said, would be to leave as many of these trees as possible so that we don't have any type of, I say these are the Chinese privets primarily, so that we don't have any erosion, any more erosion than what's currently there. And then I would propose, what I would end up doing on the landscaping side would be to fill this in with some sort of an 1.5 inch aggregate, a white limestone, something that is going to be attractive and will also serve as a water buffer, and or plant sod through here. I'll likely have to carry the water from the back of my property to the side of the home with some sort of a concrete channel. I'm going to try to get away from that by just doing landscaping. But I certainly don't want the water to exit at a higher velocity than it currently is. And the way that I plan on mitigating that is either with sod, planting sod here, and or putting in the
Channelize, you're going to channelize it with landscape and rock, so
Yes, sir.
it wouldn't spill over into the adjacent property if it comes down that line?
Correct.
Okay,
There's going to have to be some terracing likely around the backside of the landscaping. I haven't studied the topography enough to know exactly where the water's shedding, but it's pretty evident that it's all swelling up in this area and then coming down the side property line.
I have a question for you. My concern is on the back side of the house. I wasn't able to make it all the way back to the pond area. Is that a pond that was put in, or is that one that develops naturally as water collects in a low spot on the property right now?
So you probably walked by it without knowing it. It's about the size of that table, and it's a concrete basin. So I am going to be removing that.
Okay, so it's a man-made,
It's a man-made, right? from
yeah,
the-
because I was like, I couldn't seem to find the pond. I thought maybe I hadn't walked far enough back to,
No, it's the size of that table and it's a concrete man-made basin. I don't know how deep it is, but my plan is to remove it.
is it at a low point on the,
No.
since we don't have a graded site plan? No, okay.
No, ma'am.
It's really small, it's only about the size of a kiddie pool, it's man-made, it's just about the depth of a kiddie pool. It's small, like a small bathtub. It
I-
has nothing to do with flooding or drainage in that area. It's just a little-
I didn't want to get too far off the trees, and I don't have to call a point of order on myself for talking drainage rather than trees. But I was curious if it was a low spot on the property that would cause you issue.
Absolutely.
So that was where my question came from, and with trees there. Okay, let's get back to trees.
Sure.
I did have one question on, when everybody's bringing up the scenario, the water drainage. Is that which trees or which areas are your area, is the bottom area is what everybody was talking about, where the drainage is coming off?
So the drainage actually localizes up on the top. This is a higher elevation than down here. So the drainage comes from my rear neighbor. They've actually got drainage all the way through their property. And it localizes here on my property, and it comes down into a natural ravine. And as it's coming down, I can only imagine that it's starting to increase in velocity. And so that's why down here, they're seeing some increased erosion. So my objective would be to slow the water down so that the erosion is minimized.
So you're not removing a lot of trees from that area?
Correct. I would like to salvage the majority of them.
Okay.
There are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 that I'm proposing on taking out right inside of here. And that's only for a fence that I would like to build around the property.
Manager, can I talk to you briefly? If I can pause the meeting for just 1 second? Is that something I can do?
Mm. I've typically not done that. I mean, you could call a recess, but yeah, not discuss anything on the agenda. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Mendel, we can't do that. Sorry.
All right.
Is it something as far as this agenda item particularly? And
Yes, it is.
okay, so
is.
again, you as a
Can I go into an executive session for
No.
5 minutes? No.
it's not listed on the agenda as language pertaining to executive session,
Okay.
because that's usually consultation with attorney from
Okay.
that standpoint. If it's something you are going to recommend as a committee to Mr. Castro on this application, moving forward, that's y'all's decision as
Prerogative.
a board. Yes. If,
Okay.
um,
Okay.
for instance, when Ms. Scott mentioned earlier, sort of labeling and corresponding, what I would probably ask Mr. Castro to do is get with Mr. Zamorone between now and next Tuesday night to have a better diagram that has corresponding numbers to what trees, so city council can see that as well.
So we can put that in our motion.
Yes.
You see now, Mr. Castro, that it isn't so much about what you're doing, it's about how you're doing it and how you're presenting it, because I've really struggled with trying to interpret and the way this was presented. If I was presenting it, I would have probably suggested that you do it in such a way where you actually show just the oak trees by themselves with the sizes of each of them there on the diagram. and the same with the elm. And I can't really debate you on the value of the Chinese rivets or the hackberries, but it's very deceiving that you have 244 trees technically on your site. And when you look at it in more focus, it's a little bit difficult to really comprehend what's going on here. So
Sure.
I really wanted to know if anyone would like to make have any other discussion, or would like to, if there's no more discussion, we'll.
If I may, the Chinese privet removal is not pertinent to, the majority of the Chinese privet removal is not pertinent to my site build. So I don't mind resubmitting the application in the future, not taking any of the Chinese privet out, resubmitting an application for just the Chinese privet in the future, so that it brings down our overall percentage in today's meeting to below the threshold.
But the Chinese privet is currently listed as a tree that you have to put on the plan. It's a protected tree.
Well, but a big majority of them, I do not have to take out at this time for the build of the home.
But you can't remove them from the plan. You have to submit them to this. They're on the list of trees that have to be brought in front of ARC.
And I can do that on a later meeting if that's our, if our hangup is I'm over the percentage of threshold, then I don't have to remove a lot of the trees. I just need to remove the ones that are in my build pad so I can start construction. And then in the future, I can come before y'all again and say, okay, now I'd like to remove all of these Chinese privet to clean up the lot.
I think I'm about ready to make a motion unless anyone else has anything to say or would like to do so.
Go ahead.
Okay, and feel free if anyone would like to amend my motion. I would like to make a motion to not currently accept this plan as submitted due to the complexity and confusion of readability, of clarity. I would like to see it back in a clearer fashion that is easier to read and allows the Architectural Review Committee to easily, within 1 to 2 sheets, see exactly which trees and which kinds are being removed within the footprint of the building and the driveway. And I make a motion not to approve this as submitted.
So that'll get very busy. What you're requesting is a very busy sheet. That's why I broke them out into house plan, driveway, so that we could see them.
I actually asked your designer to provide us PDFs in 24 by 36 inch format and to print the sheets in 24 by 36, so we'd be able to see it at a much larger scale.
Sure.
And apparently what he sent me in the way of PDFs were his architectural drawings, which wasn't something that I was apt to review. And so I don't, before the motion, well, first the motion has to be seconded. Does anyone want a second, Ms. Scott? So nobody wants to second it?
I'll second it.
Okay. Now, I don't procedurally, again, I don't know whether we would be voting on your motion to decline his
We don't have,
submittal, or can we table it?
we don't have to vote on my motion. We have a second. So now it's on the table for discussion. So now we can discuss the motion that I made. and see if maybe we agree or disagree with that, or if there's alternates to my motion or amendments to it. So now it's on the table for discussion. So I would welcome further input from my fellow committee members on the motion that I made. So
Well,
how do you feel about that motion?
I would amend that motion to define this as tabling this discussion until you can bring forth the necessary data for not only it being crystal clear to us, but to city council, because if we're having a hard time, they're not going to review it as deeply as we are. And I'm afraid you're going to have a lot of opposition. So I would just add that we would table this agenda item.
And the time
do
frame
that-
for tabling would be next month's hearing?
Well,
So again, y'all have the ability to accept or deny the recommendation to city council, or you can table till the March, what's it, March 2nd or 3rd? Yeah. So- Yeah,
No,
so,
I would have to I would have to withdraw my motion, take my motion off the table. Before I do that, I would like other input before I remove my motion from the table. Do you have some input?
Yeah, I'm going to agree that it's hard to read, but I think you're saving as many trees as possible. And I think the percentage you can bring down is by what you're talking about. I think, I don't see any other way you can play it on the lot to save the oak trees of what we're looking at, unless you just cut out the pool or cut out some of the things or flip the house, but I don't see that being happening. And I think you've addressed some of the things, so.
you could make a motion and qualify it if you so choose based on certain conditions, I believe.
Can I?
That-
Yeah,
in
we're
other
just,
words.
well, okay, let's finish discussing my motion and then we'll talk about further motions.
Okay.
Let me make one comment before we do that. I agree with you, Moretta, but I'd also like for him to include any pool and sidewalks that are involved, so we have a much better picture of what's going on with this property.
Okay, well, then I'm going to go ahead and move to withdraw my motion and take that off.
Mr. Booth, to withdraw.
Okay, I withdraw my second.
Did you say we are unable to effectively table?
Now you
Okay,
can make a
okay, I'd
motion
like-
to table.
I'd like somebody to make that motion, if they will. And the next meeting would be March the 3rd.
That is a month away. That's an awful long time
Well,
now I can, if all you're needing me to do is take this sheet that's currently on the presentation and label the ones right here against the tree survey log, in other words, label this 170, 175, I can certainly do that and have it emailed to each of y'all. Or I can
this-
sit here and explain it again on exactly which ones are coming out. My apologies for not having a more legible, but with the scope of what's going on, if you look at the landscape plan, there was absolutely no way to label each of these trees and still show the landscape plan. It would have been an illegible document.
I am going to make a motion. I do believe table is the wrong word, although I think I can use it if I say until the March meeting of the Architecture Review Committee to bring it back in a clear format and check the percentage of tree removal that bring it within the ordinance, both in the current ordinance.
do I hear a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Okay. The motion carries. Mr. Castro, I don't believe that we can officially approve it without a public meeting. And I think that it's going to behoove you to be really prepared for the council. And we need to be in a position to really forcefully or assuredly approve what you're doing clearly to carry that and convey that message to council. And we're just frankly, I don't think we're there right now.
So a question would be, what exactly do I need to show? Because I'm telling you that the document that you're asking me to provide, it will be illegible. There's absolutely no way that I can show what you're wanting or it's legible.
Yeah, point of order,
Yeah,
we're done.
there's no more
nothing on the
discussion
table to
after tabling
discuss.
the item. Sorry.
Yeah, the item's tabled, point of order, no further discussion.
Okay. So I can't get any direction from.
You can
council.
convey a message to the city secretary if you have a question. And
I'd like to ask for an adjournment, call for an adjournment.
I'll second.
meeting is adjourned at 8:03 p.m.